I read 9 books in the month of September, so let's talk about all of them. In no particular order, let's start with Happily Haunted Afters by Brittany Kelley. Now, this was a rom-com haunted hotel kind of story. It's like second chance romance, and there were times where this book was really cringy, not gonna lie, but it was thoroughly entertaining. It was basically, think about those like Netflix holiday movies, except make it Halloweeny and spooky, and that's kind of what you get. It's like oddly charming, and it's like really entertaining, and it was full of the stuff that I was looking for. It's honestly a really good brain cleanser book, but don't expect anything like award winning if you are going to be going into this book, but definitely entertaining. The biggest issues that I had with it were definitely when it was trying too hard to be funny, and that it was riddled with modern day references, which for me really ages a book, and it just makes me cringe. So I gave this one 3 stars. Next up, we have Song of the Mark by S.M. Gauthier, and I really wanted to like this book. It was basically about our main character named Cass, and she is kind of like a mercenary for hire, and she ends up getting involved with like the captain of the guards to kind of go and investigate this sickness that has affected her, but she's the only person who's ever survived from the sickness. And it's such a perfect premise. It sounds beautiful. It's like enemies to lovers and all of that, but the writing was so lackluster, and the characters were just so bland and boring, and there was no chemistry, and everything just fell really flat. The world building, in my opinion, wasn't very good. I ended up giving this book 2 stars, and it took me forever to actually finish it. A book like this usually would take me less than a week. I'm pretty sure it took me almost 2 weeks to read this, and I was like, I almost DNF'd it, but I was like, no, I gotta finish it, and I finished it, and I'm very disappointed in it because it has all the right ingredients to be a beautiful, perfect romantasy book. It was given Blood and Ash vibes, and I was like, yeah, like this is so exciting, but didn't do it for me. Maybe for you, maybe you will like it. Definitely don't feel like you can't read any books just because I don't like them. I'm very particular. And then something that bugged me about this book is that it only followed the one character Cass, but it was written in a third-person POV. And that just threw me off. It made it harder to connect with that character, because usually third-person POVs are good when you have multiple different characters that you're following around, but you're just following around the one character, and it got really boring, to be honest. Next up, we have The Last Witch of Scotland by Philip Paris. Now, this is a historical fiction book based on the real events of the last woman who was executed for witchcraft in Britain, and that would be Janet Horne. So it follows along our main character, Alia Horne, and her mother, Janet Horne, and a traveling kind of group of performers, the main one being this guy named Jack. So there is a romance between Alia and Jack, and it kind of just follows along Alia's life from this accident that she ended up, that kind of disfigured her in a fire, all the way to her and her mom going to live in this new town, and then this priest gets interested in them because they're like really intelligent, and in this time period, women aren't allowed to be intelligent. That means you're a witch, and so big witch hunt begins. Premise sounds amazing. I ended up giving this book 2 stars because there was way too much telling instead of showing, and there was so much fluff, like at least 50%, maybe even more of this book was all fluff until you get towards the end where the actual historical things start to happen. And I felt like it was written by like 2 different people, because the stuff towards the end was brilliant, so well written, so well researched, but everything else before it was just like a completely different person. So I don't know what happened, and I really wanted to like this book as well, but unfortunately for me, it was a big disappointment. But not a disappointment book was Half a Soul by Olivia Atwater. This book was way better than I expected it. It's basically following along our main character, Dora, and this is during like the Regency period, and so everyone has to be like prim and proper. And when she was a lot younger, she ended up losing half of her soul because her mom had basically promised this like fairy guy that he could have her firstborn daughter. And the mom is not in the picture anymore, but she lives with her aunt and her cousin Vanessa. And so she and Vanessa are like practically sisters. It's very cute. And Vanessa actually saves Dora, and so that's why Dora didn't lose her whole soul. She only lost half of it. But because of that, she also lost like emotions and proper social norms and stuff, especially in this time period, like etiquette, all of this stuff. And so she finds herself in a lot of like situations. She can cause a lot of scandals and all of this. And so she and her cousin end up going to London because her cousin is looking to get married and she refuses to go without Dora because like they're best friends and it's so cute. And this is when she comes and meets this guy named Elias, and he's basically like a sorcerer, mage guy. He fought in the war, and he has a very sour personality, and she actually does not like him at the beginning. And it's a big enemies to lovers story. And this book, it was so cute that it physically pained me that I had to like put it down for a second and like squeal and like kick my feet. Like it was a whole thing, and it just like hurt so much that I had to just like take a moment and then go back to reading it because I loved it so much that like it hurt, if that makes any sense. I ended up giving it 4.5 stars, but I think I do want to bump my rating up to 5 stars because I think about this book constantly and I love it, and I'm gonna read the rest of the books in the series, and it's just so cute and I love it, and just so many feelings in this book. So good, so well written. I love it so much. Ew, I hate the way the cover feels though. These 2 books absolutely broke my heart. If He Had Been With Me and If Only I Had Told Her by Lauren Nowlin, this duology was heartbreakingly beautiful, and I loved every single second of it. The writing in both of these books is so amazing. Let's talk about this one first. This one basically follows literally just the life of this woman named Autumn from when she is just starting her high school year all the way to graduation and beyond. And she used to be best friends with this guy named Finn, who she calls Finny. And then they eventually kind of like grew apart, and she always is just kind of wondering like, what would life have been like if he had been with me? And it kind of just follows along that story. And it's one of those stories that it sounds kind of boring when I try to explain it to somebody, but if you like stories that literally just follow the life of a person doing like regular people things, you'd really like this, I think. And the writing, the writing is like this beautiful mix of poetry and beautiful narrative descriptions, and I have never read anything that's written like this, and I am absolutely like, I ate this book up. I read it so fast. This was a easy 5 stars for me. And then the sequel was a 4.5 stars, I believe I gave it, because it follows what happens after that book ends. And so you get 3 POVs in this book. You get Autumn, you get Finn, and you get Finn's friend. And what's really fun about it is that it does answer that question, like what happens when a book is done? What does that look like? What happens to the characters? How are their lives affected from the events of the first book? What are some of the perspectives from the first book that we didn't get that now we can get some more insight and detail onto? And that's what this book does, and I think it was a really good companion piece for the overall story, and I just loved it. And these books, if I could erase my brain just to reread these books, I would. They're that good, and they're all just so beautifully written. I cannot get over it. Another amazing read was A Fate Inked in Blood by Danielle L. Jensen, and this book, this was a 5-star read for me, and I'm so happy I read it. I was putting it off for a really long time. I was like, yeah, like whatever, the cover's kind of ugly. Honestly, still not a fan of the cover at all. But this book was so fun. We have our main character, Freya, and this is taken place really long time ago, like Viking era. And what's fun about it is that people in this world are basically born with like drops of god or goddess blood, or none at all. If you don't have any, you don't have any cool powers. She was born with a little bit of goddess blood in her, and that makes her the shield maiden, but she's had to hide this part of herself because there's like this prophecy that the shield maiden is going to be used in like big battles and stuff, and her parents were like, oh no, we want to protect her. But situations arise and she ends up being discovered, and so she ends up having to like follow along this kin guy, and he makes his son kind of like her protector in a way, and his name is Bjorn. And the romance in this book, I was squealing. When I tell you, I was squealing. I was freaking out. The tension is so beautiful, and it's such a like sexy book, and it's so spicy. Oh my goodness, every single thing about this book. And it has like the magic aspect, and it's like, oh my goodness. Okay, this is one of those books, I also ate this book up. It did not feel like however many pages it was. It was like, let's see how many pages this book was. barely 400 pages, and I ate this book up. It was so good. This was the first book that I read in September, and it really just set the precedent, to be honest. Like, oh, I love this book so much, and I am going to be devouring this entire series when it comes out. I was so disappointed because it's like, this is the only book out right now in the series, and I have to wait. And I don't want to wait because I just love it so much. It's beautiful and great and amazing, and I love everything about it. Another really awesome book was A Song to Drown Rivers by Anne Lane. I think I give this one 5 stars as well. And this was such a fun one because it was based on this story from ancient China about this beautiful woman named Cixi. And what is really interesting about her is that because she's so beautiful, she was kind of noticed by the military, and they basically trained her and another woman from their village to become like proper kind of ladies, so she can be a concubine, and then her friend is like a palace lady. And so they end up getting sent as like gifts to the enemy kin in the Wu kingdom, and they're from the Yu kingdom. And it's really, really cool because it shows you like the enemy is not always this evil person with sharp teeth, and everybody has a different perspective. Like, the enemy is just whoever's on the other end, and like the historical kind of like folklore-y story that was woven in. I ended up reading this whole entire article about like the history and the stuff that this was based on and like the story of it. And I did not expect this book to physically make me want to cry. Like, my heart shattered, like just boom, gone, heart gone. And it was absolutely phenomenal. It was one of the best written books that I've read in a very long time. I've never read anything from this author, but she can write for sure. And I loved her characters. There are definitely plot holes and stuff in this book that like were evident, but they didn't really bother me that much because of how much I just loved this book. So yeah, this was a really good one. And last but certainly not least, we got The God of the Woods by Liz Moore. This was a bit of a hunk-a-lunk here, and what I liked about this book, and basically what it's about, is there's 2 timelines. You have the past, where this boy named Bear goes missing, and this is part of like some really rich family, the Van Laars. And so boy Bear goes missing, and then the second timeline, the daughter from the same family, Barbara, goes missing. And so you get a bunch of these different perspectives, and the timeline is non-linear, so you're jumping back and forth from like the past to the present to the past to the present, and it's really fun because that way you're having like these, it's kind of like 2-in-1 story. And so it's like, what happened to Bear, what happened to Barbara, and you get these perspectives of different characters. You get like the mom, Alice, you get one of the camp counselors, you get the investigator, and just like a bunch of other characters, and how everything just kind of like adds up together. This book did not feel big at all. It was really interesting. It was really well set up, and it's also not really the type of book that I would usually read either. Like, usually I'll read like a romance or a fantasy or something like that, but this is more just like a thriller, kind of like murder mystery-esque kind of story. And it was good. I think I gave this about 4 stars. It wasn't 5-star good, but it was very well done. The writing was really good, and I had a good time with it. So yeah, these were all the books that I read in the month of September. If you're interested in any of these types of books, this kind of gives you good insight into like the genres that I read. So if you like these types of genres and you're looking for book recommendations, or maybe you just like to watch people read books, definitely subscribe if you haven't already, and turn on the bell notification. That way you get notified anytime a new video comes out. If you enjoy book hauls or like end of month kind of book wrap-ups, definitely hit the like button, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!